This was our first dialogue, and the theme that we chose for that dialogue was, in a world and in Africa that's changing fast and fundamentally, how should Africa prepare its leaders of tomorrow? That was the theme. And we got a couple of professors to, like I said, to prepare discussion papers which we distributed to invitees. And in terms of participation, from what I told you about the clusters, you will have noticed that some of these clusters, if invited but not, and there's no facilitation for them to attend, they will not attend. Yeah. So we're talking most of them actually, other than the private sector, will not come. So when we convene our dialogues, we always need sponsorship to get some of these people who are invited, who've got a huge contribution, because at the end of the day, what are we trying to do? Our countries, hopefully, are for communities. And there is no community which is irrelevant. That's what we've tried to do in constructing these stakeholder clusters. So each one of them, if we're hoping to influence how we run our countries, how we form our institutions, how they are governed, and make them relevant to all of these people, they must have a voice at the table in trying to advise what life looks like from their perspective, what their challenges are, what the opportunities they see are, what the facilitation they would need to execute on whatever those opportunities they see would look like. So in order for all of these parties to come to the table, we then go around and ask for sponsorships. And TrustAfrica's grant was precisely to help us do that, to make some of these people who would otherwise not have the opportunity to come and have their voice heard, come to the conference in Addis. You'll see what we do after every dialogue. We post both the pictures and the conversations and the outcomes on the website. It goes back to the philosophy of Minds, I suppose. You know, I told you that Minds is a platform where we want to create a safe space for Africans themselves. Africans themselves to have ownership of this process. And I think African philanthropy has to occupy a similar space in the sense that if we are going to determine our own agenda and take control of what happens in Africa, we should not confuse amounts of money with a principle of giving and taking responsibility for what happens in Africa. My view is that financing our own efforts through African entities giving for those efforts helps in the psychology of taking responsibility. Idioms are very telling. In English, you say that he who pays the piper calls the tune. Yeah? And I think there is a lot of meaning behind that expression. If you let other people pay, people from outside of Africa, don't be surprised if in fact the whole agenda is hijacked and they begin to dictate the agenda. If we want to occupy our space and have our voice heard on African matters, then we have to find a way from an African perspective, African sources of resources, to be able to support African initiatives. And that's why for me, African philanthropy is really important. Those things that we think are important for us, to allow us to have a voice, to have a space for articulating what our own agendas are and priorities and so on, we have somewhere along the line to find a way. In fact, it is not about money. It's about giving value. And value comes in different ways. So, money and in kind. So yes, absolutely. Often, we become too narrow and look at money only as if that's where value comes from. Time is value. Space is value. Just giving your views and advice is value. Mentoring people, all of these different ways. So absolutely. So we need to look at the financial contribution or support as only being part of an array of possible ways of supporting an African agenda.